Welcome to the Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Original D-Rose, Refracted Curvature, 10th Man Rising, Brian's Logic, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning, good morning.
Automatically.
Unfortunately for you in the audience, the warm-up has been all about panel vans, automatic transmissions, power sliding. There's been no flat Earth warm-up whatsoever. So hopefully, in lieu of a warm-up being done for Flat Earth to get them all in the mood so that you, the audience, can enjoy some Flat Earth information, we're going to hope that Housekeeping will achieve that, because the warm-up certainly didn't.
Hold on a second. That's not true, Nathan. None of this can be done on a spherical Earth. None of these cars will be doing power moves, power slides to meet a husband that falls in love with a woman that makes this move with a standard. Cannot be done in a sphere. It's got to be done on a flat Earth.
That's
Now, you got to
garbage.
say it the right way, Neil.
Rubbish.
All vans lead to flat Earth.
No.
There you go.
Misunderstanding of an analogy to say that all roads lead to a flat Earth. It's like saying all roads lead to Rome. Well, no, they don't. My local road doesn't lead to Rome, right? It's a metaphor. All roads lead to flat Earth, as in any argument that you present here will lead to a flat Earth. Well, saying I've got an argument for buying a Ford over a GMC isn't a flat Earth argument that will lead to a flat Earth, Neil. Do you understand that?
No, I'm talking about driving them. You ain't driving any of these things if you're on a sphere. Trust me with that.
Okay, let's just settle that it's a pickup line.
Right, let's put this to flatbed and move on to flat Earth. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Yes. Yes.
Go on, let's hear it.
As long as you pre-assume that it's a globe, then yes.
No, because you can't measure. No. Where's the distance on a globe being measured?
Well, what you do is you pre-assume that you're on a globe of radius 3959 miles, and then you pre-assume that Venus is also a globe of equal size, and then you use its angular size when it's transiting the sun in comparison to the sun's angular size to tell you how far you are from Venus, and then how far Venus is from the sun, and that tells you how far you are from the sun.
But that's orbital motion. You'll need a flat Earth.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John. You go. I'm stealing your thunder here. Go ahead.
Well, you're going to invoke the transit of Venus as the orbital mechanic of the sun, right? You're going to need a plane of reference for that. Where are you going to get that?
I get that from the center of the globe, I'm presuming. But it's really what I need is the angular sizes and the pre-assumptions. That's all I need.
Where'd you get the R?
No.
The pre-assumption is also going to come from a flat plane, but you haven't answered, John. You've said the flat plane's coming from the center of the sphere that you assume. Well, if you're assuming a sphere, then you need to assume it for a purpose of spherical induction. But you're then saying, no, I actually take it from the flat plane at the center of the sphere, making the sphere surplus to requirements in this example, with orbital mechanics. Not to mention that the R also came from a flat plane.
Well, look, I didn't say I can prove a globe. You asked me for a distance to the sun. What do you want, man? I can't prove any of them. I'm talking about
It was pretty concise, though. Thank you.
No worries. That's what they do, though. That is how they do it. They just use the angular sizes. They pre-assume the Earth is a globe of radius 3959 miles. They pre-assume Venus is the same exact thing in size and dimension, and they just use the angular size of the Sun and the angular size of Venus at the transit to determine the distance to the Sun. That's
See,
what they
but
did.
that drives me crazy, Brian. Why were they allowed to just assume that Venus is the same size of Earth? Was there any learned men around at the time to say, wait a second, hold on, like we do here?
Yeah, there was, but
What
no
the
one listened
freak?
to him.
Well, no,
There
it wasn't
was,
that there was
but
any
no one listened to him.
objections. It's how it gets documented in history. So Eugene's ingenious assumption is how it's detailed in history.
Yeah, because he just happened to be right.
No, but it's still an assumption, though, Brian.
Yeah.
I think
I-
the
What
I
working
know.
happens when
argument
people?
is valid.
What happens when people come here and they assume? They get their ass handed to them. You're gonna tell me that there wasn't no people like us back then? They
No,
just
no,
let them get
yeah.
away with saying, "Wait,
Argument
Venus
is
is the same
valid.
size, so let's just go with it." Now we know how far the sun is. You don't even know
Yeah.
what the
Argument.
sun is.
But
Okay, after John, I'd like to go.
I go there.
That's an argument from silence, Neil. That's all that is. You're saying because there had to be someone objecting, we just hear them. No, we don't know that.
Actually, we do.
Now I asked a question. Where were they? That's all.
I'm going to try to answer it. They did object. It was the heliocentric model that needed those variations for it to be sold as another way to look at cosmology. So in order for the natural effects to happen, they needed to have all these other things so they could sell the heliocentric model. It was already happening on flat Earth. Everything was happening. You didn't need Venus to be the size of anything. But in order for it to work in heliocentrism, they needed these assumptions, so they made it so they could explain it.
Yeah,
Well,
Right,
I'm
but
sorry,
you're saying
that's a
people were
direct attack.
objecting.
well,
You're
hang on.
saying people were objecting that you need a record of that objection before you can,
Yeah, I've read it. I've
That
read the
argument is just an
arguments when they came.
argument.
I have books that people objected to and said these things work with a stationary flat Earth, except they're trying to make it work with the heliocentric model. And so they start laughing at them and say, you think there's people antipodal, you think we're spinning. These things were written.
Well, the least we have is Tycho Brahe, who did disagree with the heliocentric model in
Oh,
the
this is
people
great.
believe in a globe.
No, this is great. So Tycho Brahe is where I get the notion that one day, and Arwin leans on this as well, something will be ascribed in heliocentrism by namesake to someone like Arwin in the same way it was for Brahe. So Brahe comes up with an objection in terms of this scaling, because every other light in the sky, sorry to steal your thunder, Brian, I just find this very amusing. Every other light in the sky, as far as Brahe is concerned, would have to be enormous. Cut to 2023 and type into a YouTube or Google search scale of sun versus Betelgeuse and just see what comes up. And you'll see that what has happened is Brahe's objection has been rephrased. So instead of, well, they'd have to be enormous as an objection, it becomes, well, they'd have to be enormous as an explanation. See how that works?
Yeah, I remember you
Precisely,
talking about that some years
precisely.
ago.
Look, they have a model, which they don't have a model, but they say they have a model. And in this model, they got to have all these assumptions in order to explain orbits that aren't orbits, sizes that aren't sizes. And so they have to explain what's happening in the night sky. You could do it the traditional way. Okay, the sky is moving, the Earth is stationary. Okay, we live on a plane, and all of those plane of reference are not violated when you do it the traditional way. But the minute you say we're a globe and we're one of these planets and we go around the sun instead of the sun moving about us, then you take all of these things that happen naturally, you got to make it fit mathematically to the seasons, events. So this is what's happening. They've made it all up, except when you go and ask them, how do you do it? And John says, well, for perigene apogee, you need a plane of reference. For orbital mechanics, you need a plane of reference. For celestial navigation, you need the equatorial plane of reference. It's never done with a globe.
Yeah, all of those roads, metaphorical in nature, Neil, lead to a flat Earth.
But Neil's point shouldn't be decried because, like, you would have to say that the law of numbers. Well, I'm making that up, whatever the hell the law of numbers is. I'm just throwing that out there because it sounds intellectual. You would have to say that the chances are that there was people at the time saying this is complete nonsense, and they just weren't. They just know history didn't record them because they never got hired.
Did no one hear John?
I did record
hold
them.
on.
I have the book.
Did no one hear John say it was an argument
Fair
from
enough.
silence fallacy? Did no one hear him?
But hold on a second. Wait. So that means it's a direct assault on the word of God. If you're going to ask me why they're doing it, that's why they did it.
Nobody asked.
Sorry.
I've got a couple more housekeeping questions that I want to ask in lieu of the video that we're going to cover in a minute, right? So, any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container?
It's an
Negative.
impossibility.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
There's no
What's
evidence of gravity. Man, Neil's hot today. Go, Neil.
I'm asking him what it is. He asks every day, any scientific evidence of gravity? What the hell is gravity?
It's something we're told
Well,
holds
if
us to
you're
a
gonna-
spinning water ball flying through a sky vacuum that we've just covered doesn't exist.
There's evidence that it
you're
doesn't
gonna-
exist.
Well, the evidence that it does exist is the deviation from horizontal of a moving projectile.
Any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline?
Impossible. That's what the sextant showed. It's an angle measuring device. Two straight lines meeting at a common point is called the vertex. That would be the navigator holding the tool itself, and it must be subtracted from 90. There is no possibility of a 90 on a sphere Earth that's curving because the GP of the star or sun that the navigator is using against the horizon has a shared baseline to create the 90.
Indeed. Now, it'll make
Nathan.
sense shortly why I've asked those specific housekeeping questions today, because we normally only do a couple, right, unless we're doing all of them. Anyway, why can't I see the button to... There we go. Going by in the live chat now, if you're watching live, or if you're not, check it out in the live stream replay. There is a link to the videographer that we're going to cover today, which is Physics Videos by Eugene Khutoryansky. I've probably butchered that. I'm really sorry, Eugene. But there we go. I've put a link to your video. Hopefully people from this chat will let you know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, and they'll leave some positive comment that won't immediately get removed because it's pouring scorn on whatever we've said here, which we probably will. But there we go. Just let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. The idea being that were he to respond, he would put a link to our video so we could receive some algorithmic love from him where we receive none from YouTube, as we're buried at the bottom of the lists. So we're going to cover this video, which is called 4-Dimension Black Universe Shattered. Okay. Hence us asking about scientific evidence of gravity, as that's 4D space-time. So we're going to get into it. There was someone who wanted to get a word in before we did, though, so whoever that was, go ahead.
That was me. It's gone. The time has gone past. I was just going to say, asking you, is there any evidence that great circle roots are circles? That was it.
Debates between Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr about the interpretation of quantum physics. Einstein famously said that God does not throw dice. In this statement,
Who cares what Einstein said? God doesn't throw dice. God doesn't climb hills, says Nathan Oakley.
Einstein was not expressing a belief in God, but expressing his rejection of the idea that the universe can be intrinsically probabilistic.
Probability is a concept in a language of maths that we have invented. So what you're saying, in essence, is he wasn't guilty of a reification fallacy, but also definitely didn't believe in God. Got to drop that in. Why is he talking about him then? Or her?
Intrinsically probabilistic universe, as is described by the most popular interpretations of quantum mechanics, is incompatible with Einstein's theory of relativity.
Boom! Absolutely correct.
In Einstein's general theory of relativity,
Not a
the
theory.
universe consists of a curved four-dimensional space-time.
Yeah, we don't have a fourth dimensional pseudo-Riemannian invented by Einstein time dimension. It's nonsense.
That's wrong,
Your ti-
though. What she said. The universe is not a curved fourth-dimensional space-time. It's a flat plane that has indentations made by mass. It's not. It's special relativity, which is flat space-time.
Yeah, what she would be more accurate to describe would be the cause and effect relationship that's postulated in a pseudo-geometry by Einstein, which is to say that the uneven distribution of mass in the universe causes the warping of his invented space-time dimension. That's more accurate.
Exactly.
Right, got a major on the details?
Time is just another dimension,
No, it isn't.
similar to the three spatial dimensions.
No, it isn't.
In fact, we can describe our universe
Describe? Yeah, we can, because that's what it's being done with. The language of maths is describing this pseudo-geometry. Does not represent the world we live in any way, shape or form. There is no fourth dimension.
using any four-dimensional coordinate system we wish,
That'll need a flat plane.
even with none of the four coordinates corresponding to the time dimension of any observer.
There is no time dimension for any observer.
According to
Yeah.
Einstein,
Go ahead.
Just saying, there's no such thing as a four-dimensional coordinate system. It's
Nope.
impossible. Well, you only have three.
Yeah.
You know,
and
it's crazy to even anything to do with a fourth dimension or anything else. You're working outside of reality.
yeah, it's even described in the title of the geometry. It's pseudo. He even titled it that way.
Can
Because
you
it's exactly what it is.
Can you replay the last 5 seconds?
I'm have to read out this super chat. Shout out to Godzilla, who says, just flew back from the fourth dimension, and man, are my imagination's tired. Was tired a car pun?
system we wish, even with none of the four coordinates corresponding to the time dimension of any observer.
What does that mean?
It means even if the time dimension doesn't coincide with the time dimension.
It sounds like a negative, like she's saying something, but she's not saying something because it doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
I just want to point out that the fourth dimension that Einstein talks about required a flat plane. Time requires a flat plane.
I did drop that in there.
According to Einstein, our four-dimensional universe can be thought of as a
Sort of. See that?
single block, and the passage of time is merely a psychological illusion to beings such as ourselves.
Hold on. He said thought. It's a thought experiment then.
Yeah.
A hypothetical observer outside our block universe would simultaneously see all the past and future versions of ourselves throughout our entire timeline. The present version of ourselves would be no more special than any of the past or future versions of ourselves. Just as there are no special positions in space, there is also no special moment in time.
Special moment in time. What? Again, there is no...
Psychological.
Go on, 10th.
She said, well, this computer voice, I believe, said to us in that block, inside of it, there's time of psychological illusions, but someone outside the block sees it differently, but doesn't see anything different. I mean, this is so out there.
Yeah, it's a movie
No,
Interstellar.
She's talking about that song, that song, that love song from the 90s, One Moment in Time.
Well, they've reified the arrow of time and then worked outside the convention that's used to describe motion to create a universe that they're not in.
Spot on. Yeah, they've taken this concept of entropy and turned it into a dimension.
This idea is essential to Einstein's theory of relativity, which states that
Not a theory.
There is no special moment in time called the present.
Yeah, this kind of nonsense is just irritating. We've got a convention that describes how we exist in the known universe, and we call that flow time. But it's a convention. It's our way of describing our passage through our known existence. That's how we describe it. Now, John, kudos to him, about as concise as you can get it. They're now working outside of the convention we use. So when we say the present, and she's saying, well, in Einstein reification, there is no present. Well, present is just how I communicate my current existence in the universe as it stands now. Well, that's an idea that I can verbally communicate to someone else when I say currently or some other qualifying word that describes the existence of time in this moment. I'm trying to deviate from what they've said in terms of my choice of words, because that's all they are. Just conventions we are utilizing as tools to communicate with one another. Now, conventions aren't something that can be turned into dimensions, as they've been done by Einstein, and then labelled, incorrectly, fraudulently, as theory. This isn't a theory. It's just nonsense pseudo-geometry invented by a man named Einstein that reifies time. Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you were finished.
No, that was it. That was the last statement. Reification of time. John summarised it far better than I did. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, well, the present moment is your present position, entropic position, isn't it? Because we're under entropy all the time from the moment we're born. We're heading towards death. So the present moment is your present entropic point. Is it not? Well,
yeah,
that's what it is.
Yes, you can describe it. My present position on the arrow of time, I can use as a verbalization. But am I standing on an arrow? Maybe that arrow could become a dimension.
Well, you remember when I said that first they referred to us within our reality, that the way we view time, according to what they said, is a psychological illusion. Now, well, I know when the Nathan Oakley show starts every morning, so I wake up, make my cup of coffee, so I'm on time. Is that a psychological illusion that I'm going through?
No, it's your extrapolation of something that's been put into mechanical motion to give us a visual, conceptual idea of the passage of our existence in the known universe. That would be a clock, as opposed to time.
Right. But my point is this. I know what you just said is what I did. But why would anyone refer to that very thing you just said as a psychological illusion?
Because you can then take it out of context or outside the convention, as John described it more accurately, to turn it into a dimension, so that then their description of what the 4 dimensions that we now have, that are all very similar when one's just been invented by Einstein, are accurate, whereas your convention and misunderstanding of this convention of time is wrong. Our version with 4D space-time as a result of the uneven distribution of mass being bent is what we have described gravity as, to confuse high school students who are told it was a force holding them to a ball.
So when the sun's movement is 15 degrees an hour, and we got 24 of those, that's a psychological illusion now?
It is if you work outside the convention and then say that working outside of that convention in false dichotomy is incorrect, because my version of 4D bent space-time, which I'm going to call gravity, needs the extra dimension that I've invented as a result of me standing on the arrow of entropy.
I see. So basically, in order to come on with the con job, you got to make my reality an illusion first.
A reality that you don't have to begin with. But if we can take that we are going to be all collectively, you in false dichotomy as a flat earther in this example, and me as a baller with 4D space-time, we all understand that time is something that is real. Therefore, my version of it in reality is going to be described as pseudo-Riemannian force space-time bending and gravity. Your version, that you're currently not reifying but will be once I've finished with this false dichotomy, your version's wrong, 10th.
Excellent. Excellent breakdown.
10th man, Einstein removed reality from reality. That's the whole point. reality doesn't exist.
Yeah,
do it
no, I
that way.
wanted to go back.
Because reality is broken down by the arrow of time. If you want to describe decay, as you've done, Brian, which is a great way of getting people to understand it in reality. Well, if you take that and put it into a fourth dimension in a pseudo-geometry, you've detached yourself from reality.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And then you can do whatever you like in the mathematics. You can do whatever you like with the world people think you're describing. And you, as the unintended victim of this garbage, will do the work for them. You will reify the world of Einstein for them. You don't need to be told. In fact, they've told you in this very presentation how it's a thought experiment. They've told you. So it's down to you. It's your fault when you reify this garbage. You, the audience member I'm talking to.
This is because different observers inside our universe will disagree
But
on
the hypothetical ones.
whether or not two events happened simultaneously.
So for those hypothetical observers that we're not,
Even after we take into account the amount of time necessary for light to reach our eyes,
sorry, that would give us a reified time distance by way of Kepler's extrapolations and Eugene's extrapolations detailed at the beginning of the show. What a coincidence. It's almost like I knew what was going to be in this video before watching it.
different observers can still disagree on the simultaneity of different events.
Can they? What, the hypothetical observers? These hypothetical observers are now disagreeing with each other. It's fascinating stuff. 100 people watching. Wow.
Man.
Great. Please share the show. Very warm welcome to you all. Go ahead, whoever that was.
Sorry, I stepped in on you. Stickmen, yeah, stickmen are all in agreement. That's what it turns you into, doesn't it? General relativity turns you into stickmen. You draw on a piece of paper.
I'll elaborate on that now because you obviously won't. No, if you, Brian, a three-dimensional being, imagined yourself as a two-dimensional being on a two-dimensional piece of paper, strolling around, you with me? You are that two-dimensional stickman now. Well, just imagine that you wouldn't have any comprehension of the third dimension beyond your two-dimensional existence that you now exist in. We all clear there's a third dimension beyond the second dimension that you are when you are a stickman. Now imagine that you are that stickman who now understands that there's a third dimension which we live in. Well, beyond our dimension that we live in, like for the stickman, there's a fourth dimension. And just like the stickman, you're unaware of that fourth dimension because it only exists in Einstein's invented pseudo-geometry. But for the stickman, there's going to be a third dimension, which we all know is real. Therefore, for you, the three-dimensional being, there is a fourth dimensional being.
It all makes sense now.
Makes perfect sense.
There is no universal moment in time called the present that all observers can simultaneously agree upon.
No. There's no present for the hypothetical observers in your example, but now we've juxtaposed that with reality in terms of the phraseology. So the bait and switch of this videographer is now abundant because I've pointed it out and Brian's pointed it out.
Just as different observers can...
Hold on, can you see what's on screen, Brian? Have you got the live stream up?
No, I don't, Nathan, no. Is it a stickman?
No, it's a Cartesian grid.
All right. Yeah, that's what special relativity is.
Yep. Gonna need a flat earth for this.
can have different orientations for the three axes for the three spatial coordinates. Different observers will also have different orientations for the time axis.
Sorry, no. What you've just shown on screen is not the time axis. You've substituted the z-axis in terms of height for time. So now we have x, y, and time going upwards.
So
Yeah,
how
but
she
you
can
said three
validate all of
dimensions.
this? I'm sorry.
No, you
I
go,
think
Neil. You were
Nathan-
ahead of me.
I'm saying, how's she going to validate all of this? Or we just strictly going on Einstein's thought experiment here?
Well, she said something a few minutes ago that was incorrect. She said people can't agree on that their present moment doesn't doesn't coordinate together. It's like, that's completely false. Everybody, the present moment right now is the same for everybody and every living thing, every rock, everything is all in the present moment right now. So everything
But
is.
the way that-
Go on.
I would say, but the way you process that data, depending upon your intelligence and reflexes, may be different, and they're playing upon that. Your ability to comprehend and interpret the information around you, right? So they're playing on that, which is unique to the individual to say, no, it's actually space-time bending.
Well, the narrator said 3 dimensions, and we know that's the Z axis, but it's written here time. So it's either Z/time or it's totally relabeled time.
Yeah, they still don't only have 3 dimensions. That's what I said a minute ago. They don't have, like they have, when Nathan was saying they have X, Y, and time, there's still 3. They've removed elevations above and below the X, Y grid, and they've replaced it with time. But they still don't have 3
It's perfectly reasonable. While you and I are both about 6'2" tall, incorrect. We're actually 2.5 days tall.
Well,
no, you're a bit taller than me, so you're actually longer in time than I am.
It's going to be
3.5
interesting.
days tall.
It's going to be, that's a weak argument, by the way. Thank you, Brian. It's going to be interesting as they move the X and Y axis, what you see happening with that time.
When selecting a new space-time coordinate system by rotating the axes for the time dimension rotates in the opposite direction of the 3 spatial dimensions.
Sorry, 3 spatial dimensions. Where's the third one? There isn't one. It's just been removed because you can't depict it.
Therefore, even in the theory of relativity, the time dimension is special in that it is not exactly like the 3 spatial dimensions.
It is. In this diagram, you've substituted height for time. So it is exactly the same. Like, literally couldn't be any different. Because that's how you've depicted it. Yeah, also, it's not a theory.
But the key point is that there is no special point along the time dimension which we
The main point is there's no special point.
call the present, and this
Yeah, there is. I'm in it now.
leads to the idea of a 4-dimensional block universe.
Does it? What, substituting height for time gives you an idea of a 4-dimensional block universe? No, Einstein gave us the idea. He just told us after inventing it.
Can we
If you
pause here
remove...
for a minute? Go on, Brian. I'll go after you.
No, you go first then.
No, okay. So this statement that's been said now several times, there is no such thing as the present. Where does this nonsense come from, and why is it important for them to say it?
I don't know. It's all in the past.
Yeah, it's all in the past. Exactly. That nailed it, Nathan. Because what I was going to say is kind of pointless now, but I'll say it anyway, is that when they say there's no present moment, they're excluding time, which is their 4th dimension. But time is what Einstein called time was just a hijack of the path of entropy. So they're excluding entropy, basically. Because if there's no present moment, then there is no you. There is no entropy. There is no anything.
That's why I asked. That's why I asked the question. Sorry, Brian. That's why I asked the question. Is because if there's no present moment, but you keep reciting and referring to time, then what is time offering you? Is it the past or the future, but not the present?
Well, how can you have a past or future without a present? There's no present moment. There isn't a past or future.
I know.
It can't be 4 o'clock. It can't be 4 o'clock if there wasn't a 2 o'clock, and there's not going to be a 6 o'clock.
You're dangerously close to almost working outside the convention yourselves. How can there be a past and present in this context now? It's borderline reification on your part. How can we describe?
No, I'm challenging you.
How can we describe the past or present or future if there is no time?
Well, if there's no present moment, you can't describe them because they didn't exist. Because there was no present moment in the past or the future because they weren't there.
Time doesn't, but in physical terms, time does not exist. It is merely our convention.
Correct. It's a convention of man, and we got it by seeing the sun's movement. So we invented clocks and everything else. Got it. We're not reifying it. We're challenging that statement that there's no such thing as the present.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Nathan nailed it. He said it's in the past, which is a
that was a great
contradiction to what he said. Yeah, to what she said, but that nails it. It's in the past. You know, and if she was here, she'd nod her head going, yes, completely contradicting herself.
So basically, Brian, what you're saying that everything in the past was once present first.
Well, if you remember that present moment we were talking about a few minutes ago, well,
Yeah,
if that didn't exist, then this doesn't exist.
So the future, the past, and the present doesn't exist.
No,
Yeah, you're not getting older because you were young to
but in the
begin with.
strictest sense, she is accurate if you take her out of context and into the context we're now describing, right? So that's why I say you're dangerously close on reification. That moment is in recorded history, and I can describe it and replay it. But in physical terms, that moment that has passed, by way of my description, does not exist any longer.
Well, forget about citations.
Well, it didn't exist at all, because if the present moment doesn't exist...
Back into their context, correct. Back in their context, yes, that's correct. You can't even describe how it was in existence and now is no longer in existence when reified if you don't have a present. That's in their world of nonsensical 4D spacetime. But in physical terms, no, we can't. We also have to work within the convention that time is. So to describe a past in physical terms is inaccurate. I just want to make that clear.
Okay, just as long as you know that. Okay, so when Danny Faulkner rewrites history and says for 25 centuries we've known the Earth is flat, that's never happened then.
Well, their arrow of time is an arrow of no direction.
I'm sorry, because he said, first of all, I made a mistake. He says for 25 centuries, we've known the Earth is not flat, but a globe. And he's citing the Greeks when a couple of them got together and started thinking about it. And he references that as the whole world. So that never happened then.
Does he realise that? Hold on. I know it's a tangent. Hold on. Does Danny Faulkner know that is in direct contravention to the tramp stamp under all flat Earth videos? Does he know that?
I don't think he does.
Well, he doesn't know his history because the Chinese didn't even accept it until the early 1900s.
And they only accepted it at the same time as their last emperor was in power.
And they only accepted it because the Jesuits came in and said, look, there's another way of navigating. And you could assume we're on a globe, and here's the reified math and all the different sizes to Venus and Earth. And we can explain what's occurring naturally without the flat plane. But later I'll tell you we needed the flat plane because we're using the equatorial plane, and we really not changed anything.
Okay, let's go back onto this video, though, because otherwise we've segued right off from 4D spacetime.
Sorry, just very quickly.
However,
the Jesuits failed the first time, or maybe they came in twice and failed, but the third time, or the second time, sorry, I think it was specific that they came at that point, at 1909 or 1910, because the emperor, the last emperor of China was at that point. So they came in at a big changing point in the history of China. And that's when
they were actually kicked out at one point, and they came back. So you're right about that.
Yeah, they were kicked out probably by the emperor.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nathan.
That's all right.
this idea of a four-dimensional block universe is shattered if we believe that the universe is intrinsically probabilistic,
as demonstrated by quantum mechanics, right? So in terms of being probabilistic, that's a gross oversimplification of quantum mechanics. So when you're describing diffraction patterns, then the way that you have a mathematical convention to describe diffraction, and when you're scientifically validating the cause thereof, that would be knowledge of which path to lead to quantum mechanics, that's again a convention that you can work outside of to say it doesn't comport with this convention of the probabilistic world that we live in. No, we don't. We've taken wave function, which is a probability description within mathematics, to ascribe to a diffraction pattern when we detail it through communication with someone else. So we say, if I change the description from probability distribution, which is what a wave function is, to look at that pattern of lights on the wall, I wonder what caused that. Yeah. Suddenly you're not into the notion of, well, it's a probability distribution that breaks down. Therefore, what we're actually studying in terms of quantum mechanics is wave function collapse. Well, to rephrase that, it's probability distribution collapse. But we're 3 layers into conventions that we've used to verbalize an effect we see when we see light diffraction. But yes, we can qualify that through a convention as wave function and therefore mathematical probability distribution, but that doesn't directly correlate to us describing the world with quantum mechanics as being based on probability. That isn't the case. Now, when we go to the extremes of the Earth and say, okay, let's say we're at an area that's never been experienced before, then you can, in an example, describe the tree that doesn't exist yet, that only exists as a probability. But you're so far into the realms of conceptualization that it doesn't, even then, in that conceptualization, translate back into a reification of this convention. So, who was it that was trying to get a word in? I'm basically at the end now.
I was just going to say that she says that we live in a probabilistic universe, but in a probabilistic universe, there is no certainty. Is she certain that we live in a probabilistic universe?
Right. It's a contradiction on its face, isn't it? It's a what's the word?
Contradiction?
Not contradiction. It's a paradox.
Paradox.
Paradox. Yeah.
What does that term mean? The word, what's the term? Probability? Probabilistic. Probabilistic. Every time I hear that, I just get this fuzzy feeling, this kind of vague feeling. Every time I hear that probabilistic, that sounds very mathematical and vague. Kind of like it's like pi. It's probabilistic. You're not going to wait. It sounds a bit like that. It's like pi. When they describe pi, they never have exact pi. So because they can't come up with exact pi, they come up with some nonsense term to describe why it's not exact. It's not exact because you can't come up with it. You know what I mean? That's the truth.
Again, a gross oversimplification of...
I cringe. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. That's me interrupting you. Sorry.
No, I'm finished. I'm just saying when I hear probabilistic, I cringe. It's like this vague feeling I get. Go on. I'm sorry. I'm asking about it. So correct me.
The probability that's described, right, what we experience in general terms isn't the diffraction, which gets later described as probability distribution or wave function. What's actually being studied? Well, it's wave function collapse. What does that mean? Well, in terms of a phenomena, it's the reality that we actually experience in general terms. We don't generally experience the probability distribution of diffraction. What we typically experience is the actualization that you can induce through knowledge of which path the light's traveling through in terms of quantum mechanics and the double slit. Well, that knowledge takes away the probability aspect. In other words, because we as people have knowledge, or knowledge is in existence, we have an actualized world. We live in it. It's physical, right? Now, without that knowledge, you would only have probability. So that's the cause and effect relationship that's establishing quantum mechanics. That would be knowledge of which path is the, before validation, the presumed cause, and the effect being studied is wave function collapse. Again, a convention which we describe probability distribution through mathematics and language. That's a light pattern on a wall that is altered through knowing which way the light went to get to that at the time of investigation. Just a funny pattern. Yeah? Now, you can qualify the pattern with its distribution in terms of the probability of where each marker will lie next when fired individually, photons of light at a photographic plate. But that distribution pattern isn't what gives us our reality. Our reality isn't based on the probability when we don't know anything. What quantum mechanics showed us is having knowledge, or more importantly, a knower, is the start of the actualization of the world that we live in. What makes it the physical reality? Where does that begin? With a knower, with somebody to have the knowledge. That's where it all begins. What begins? The actualization of our world, not the probability. We don't live in a probabilistic world. We'd be living in a world where things didn't make sense and things disappeared out of reality. There's only the probability that the tree might be there tomorrow is absurd. So to take that notion that we do not experience, we experience actualized reality, flip it on its head, like Einstein's done, and then take away entropy and turn it into a dimension, is how far you've got to go to get away from what this is really all about. A force that isn't a force holding you to the side of a spinning water ball. That's the only reason we've got this long, convoluted gaggle screw of nonsense alluding to four-dimensional substitutions of entropy and descriptions of a reality that it's opposing that isn't our world, that's based in probability, according to Einstein, when he says that God doesn't throw the dice, or whatever quote he said. That's meaningless garbage to take you away from the fact that what you were taught in high school was you're held to a ball with a force. Not anymore, says Einstein. Here's the complicated crap that you need to swallow instead. So you forget all about the force that it isn't. Hopefully don't realise that you haven't got a force holding you to a ball anymore because of how complicated Einstein's made entropy. That's all he's done. Anyway, that was a long waffle.
Okay, so when John says there's no certainty in the probabilistic universe, then tomorrow the actualization of your showtime, it becomes probabilistic.
Exactly. No, it doesn't. You know, we do have certainty in the world. What we experience is an actualized world. We don't experience the diffraction of a probabilistic, yet to be organized into reality world. That is not what we experience. That is not the norm. That's a phenomena being studied to come to the conclusions that quantum mechanics has come to give us the technology we're having this conversation on right now.
Yeah, it's Einstein made things so complicated that most people would never even understand that the force that they thought they had was never there.
Exactly. That's all this is about. It's only about a force that we haven't really got that can be debunked by just showing how gas behaves. So you've got to convolute that because you still need people to be taught that you've got a force right up to higher education levels and then give you this crap.
Yeah, but the problem is, in order to understand this, you need to go to 4 years of higher education, but there's no 4 years.
Well, there's no present to be studying it in.
Yeah, it takes 4 years that don't exist to study and learn about the thing that remove the thing that you need to keep your belief alive.
Right. Anyway, should we continue with the video? Oh, go on, John.
In a probabilistic universe, the cause of an effect may not be the cause of the effect tomorrow,
Yeah.
in the next room.
Exactly.
As Chaiki is alluded to asserting.
And that is the world that they really need. But they need to oppose you when they describe their flat Earth geometry-based pseudo-space-time bending as a substitution for a force that's not a force that's supposed to be holding you to the side of a ball that's flying through space at an astronomical speed in a sky vacuum. Let's do a bit more video.
As is stated by the most popular interpretations of quantum mechanics. When we say that the universe is intrinsically probabilistic, this means more than simply that it's impossible for us to...
Notice how they had a black cat in the background, so they're alluding to Schrodinger's thought experiment as opposed to quantum mechanics. Now that might have its place on the road to quantum mechanics.
To predict the future. This means that it's impossible even for an observer external to our universe to predict the...
Who's the external observer to our universe, precisely? It's God they're talking about.
Future. Because the future doesn't yet exist. To understand this...
But the present doesn't exist and the future doesn't yet exist. Okay. Yeah, none of this exists. It's all conceptual.
Let's first consider the scenario of traditional determinism. Suppose we have a sequence of numbers as a function of time. Suppose there is a pattern to these numbers, so that if you know the number at any one point in time, you can extrapolate forward to predict the numbers in this sequence at any future moments in time.
This is a mathematics exercise. This has absolutely no bearing on reality whatsoever.
Yeah, look at the numbers. They're compounding.
This is analogous to the universe as was...
No, it isn't analogous to the universe. I just detailed how this has absolutely no bearing on the universe whatsoever. It's just a mathematical exercise. But you're now going to tell us that it's analogous to the universe? Yeah, that's what this is all about.
Described by the classical laws of
Described by laws. Sorry, what? Natural laws? Made up laws.
Newtonian physics. And
oh, I see. Newtonian physics being what? The nonsense that's been superseded by Einstein?
to the universe as is described by Einstein's theory of relativity.
So, yes.
Now, let's again...
Go ahead.
Yeah, Newton's laws of motion were debunked by a claim of a rotating Earth, because they are designed around an inertial frame of reference.
That's correct. Shout out to Quantum Eraser.
And suppose that we have a sequence of numbers as a function of time. But this time, with that...
Yeah, but we don't, because that's the reification working outside of the convention of time.
Without any predictable pattern. Even if we know all the previous numbers in the sequence, this is not enough to be able to predict any of the future numbers. The existence of such a sequence of numbers does not yet shatter the idea of a block universe.
We haven't got a block universe. None of this is real. Telling us that it's analogous when giving us a mathematical... Not even a problem, it's a description. It doesn't mean anything in terms of my physical existence at all.
A sequence of numbers...
Go on.
Just very quickly, I think what the main problem they have is Einstein removed Newton, right, and Newtonian mechanics. But then Einstein was removed by quantum mechanics, and they just don't want to accept that part.
Yep.
It seems to be the ongoing trend, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know, give us some practical application for Einsteinian pseudo-force-space time bending. If it's got some super useful practical application, then I'm sure we'd all be behind it. Well, it hasn't. It's been usurped, and the usurping by way of quantum mechanics, superseding isn't the right word, because there's nothing to supersede because there's no practical application for bent space-time. Quantum mechanics, on the other hand, has advanced humanity.
Yeah.
Well, now, hold on a sec. I can give you a practical application. Einsteinian mechanics takes a flat plane and this GPS coordinates and bends them into a floating frame of reference, so you can conceptualize it as a ball.
But
that's
so
super
you're saying,
important.
yeah, I've said this before. I should have dropped that in as a disclaimer, and I will from now forth. The only practical purpose, therefore, is to indoctrinate people onto a ball.
Well, yeah, and even when it comes to GPS, it's just the two-way speed of light calculation that's been used. So technically, you don't need any of the rest of general relativity.
Yeah, but you'll need that to get to this two-way speed of light, though.
Well, no, that was around before general relativity, so you can preassume that on its own.
The two-way speed of light? No, it wasn't. You'd need distance to the sun. It's 1 AU.
Hold on.
Yeah, but that was around before Einstein.
Hold on, I just want to clarify this, Brian, unless I'm completely misunderstanding this, which it sounds like I am from what Brian's saying.
Yeah, the two-way speed of light calculation was around before Einstein.
No, we're not talking about Einstein.
Well, but that's what I was talking about. I was saying that when it comes to GPS,
Kepler and orbits.
Yeah, no, it's based off of the average distance to the distance from the globe Earth to its heliocentric sun over the course of 12 months. It's based off of that. That's the origins of it. It's not that is the two-way speed of light. It's complicated. It's based off of that. I'd have to go and get the computer out and get the workup I have of it.
But the point is that it came before Einstein.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, fine.
The distance to the sun was Cassini in 1672. The two-way speed of light was Romer in 1676. It's 4 years difference. You know what I mean? So it's even just that alone should send off alarm bells, as QE says. But yeah, that was around before Einstein. And my point was that for GPS, within how they claim it works, let's say heliocentric wise, they don't even really need anything else other than the two-way speed of light calculation. So the rest of general relativity, although it's kind of part of their orbits, it doesn't not when it comes to the globe and localized, you don't really need the rest of general relativity.
Right, so you don't need,
That's not
indeed,
true.
you don't need 4D space-time to describe this. Go ahead, John.
Go on, John.
But no, you have to have the 4D space-time to bend the flat plane onto a sphere from those measurements, because GPS isn't using Haber-sign.
Oh, I know it's not using Haber-sign. It's not even using the Fourier space light calculation, really. But it's not using that either. But that's the point is that you don't really need the GPS works fine with Newtonian incorrectly called gravity. It works fine with that. There are satellites orbiting a globe works fine with that.
No, I'm not talking about their satellites orbiting a globe, and there's no globe. It's satellites orbiting a flat plane. What I'm talking about is transforming that coordinate system into a floating coordinate system and then bending space around a ball.
Well, the mass of the globe Earth is what bends special.
Yeah, that's true,
space-time.
Brian. Hold on. That is true. But what John's saying is how this is put into practical application for globers is to warp space, and with the justification of four-dimensional space-time, around this grid to make it work with the grid when wrapped around a ball, as opposed to have a sign, which is how it was done, 200 or 300 years ago.
Yeah, well, I can't argue with all that because I don't know the full history of the Haber-sign formula. As in when it was first used, or any use of it with satellites or anything like that. I just know that they don't really need the rest of general relativity. They can use incorrectly called Newtonian force of attraction, gravity, and keep an orbit going of a satellite and use just the two-way speed light calculation to make up the distances.
Sure, but this is news to me.
No,
I mean,
it doesn't work.
we must cover this again in more detail rather than just a little section while we're covering this video, John. But this is a new practical application that I was unaware of for warping space-time.
Right, because if you look, you see that the way they distort orbits is with angles from a flat plane, right? Well, they get some of those distortions, which doesn't align with what they think the orbit is, and then they have to apply a correction to get their floating reference frame. That's what they're doing, you know. They're either dilating or time or warping space to make it conform to what they believe it is.
Gotcha.
I'm not going to argue with John here now. I understand what he's talking about, but I don't want to go into it now.
I do, but just not now.
I would
too.
like to deal with it another time.
Yeah, it's me too. Definitely. This is definitely going to get discussed again.
Pattern could still exist inside a block universe. An observer outside this block universe would be able to see the entire sequence simultaneously. Hence, all the numbers in the sequence can be thought of as always having already existed from the beginning,
What, in a present moment that doesn't exist?
despite the fact that we humans are not able to predict them. But this is not what an intrinsically probabilistic universe means in the context of quantum mechanics. It literally means that at any given moment in time, the future numbers in this sequence don't yet exist.
No, that's not what it means. No, quantum mechanics established knowledge of which path causes wave function collapse.
In other words,
Well,
the
this
future
is,
number...
Hang on. This is what John was saying. They're doing this so they get rid of cause and effect, because cause and effect could change.
Right.
are not knowable even to the hypothetical observer outside the universe.
Says you and Einstein. I mean, but that observer was just looking over all of these block universes in their entirety, right? Like they're God. Hypothetically speaking.
This shatters the very notion of a block universe. since the block universe theory states the entire timeline has always existed from the beginning,
Not a theory.
and an external observer would be able to see it. The idea that even an observer external to our universe would not be able to predict the future is not merely a metaphysical supposition. There are
Sorry, a moment ago it was to be juxtaposed with reality. Now it's a metaphysical supposition. Yeah? Yeah, it's a metaphysical supposition. It's not in any way comparable to our known universe.
empirical observation.
Hang on. Can you replay that last 5 seconds, please?
Even an observer external to our universe would not be able to predict the future is not merely a metaphysical supposition. There are empirical observations and scientific experiments we can make which address this issue.
Empirical observations? Wow, sounds scientific. Oh, and scientific experiments. Wow. Wonder why we ask for scientific evidence of gravity, given that there are empirical observations and scientific experiments we can make which address this issue. So that would be experiments. Suppositional statements with hypothesis. Go ahead, 10th.
Okay, yeah, Brian, go after me, because this is the point I want to make. So I bought a book that tells me all the positions of the navigation stars from the year 2000 to 2050. And we live in 2023. So empirically, how did they get them, and how do they know where they're going to be in 2050 if we don't know?
We do know. Observations of a flat plane, angle measurements off a flat plane.
And a repeat cycle of those stars yearly.
Yeah.
But what's an empirical observation? I'm making an empirical observation of the bin in my kitchen.
Sounds like science to me.
Yeah, that's what they're saying, isn't it? I can see something and then I can make stuff up about it.
Yep.
No, but that's a miracle observation.
Well, that's what they got a picture of. Someone looking down a microscope. This isn't science. That's looking at stuff.
How can anything be repeatable, testable, or falsifiable in a probabilistic paradox?
It can't be.
That doesn't make sense.
Chaos.
Consider, for
Sorry,
example, the spins of an entangled pair of particles. In classical physics, the spin of a particle can be described by an arrow pointing along the axis of rotation.
Okay, so now she's doing a vague job of detailing the delayed choice quantum eraser, because that sends entangled particles along different paths, hence the name delayed choice.
Particles spinning in opposite directions will have their arrows pointed in opposite directions.
Will they? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to make a point, and I wanted to make it before you press play, but I didn't want to start jumping in when you press play. When she refers to the word universe, she's not talking about what we're talking about. Like, that really needs to be clearly defined. When she talks about universe, she's talking about an Albert Einstein 4D time-bending nonsense, right? That's what she's talking about, with all the bells and whistles. But the problem with that is it possible that because of that mindset and that learning, that none of these people could ever truly accept quantum mechanics?
Well, they can't. It defies their paradigm, so yes. Or no, depending on how you want to. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
In quantum mechanics, we can only measure the spin along one axis at a time. We will refer to the results as either pointing towards the red plate or pointing towards the blue plate. In our pair of entangled particles, suppose we measure the spin of each particle only once.
Why are we measuring spins of particles? What's going on? What's she talking about?
Excuse me. Is she calling light a particle all of a sudden?
I mean, that's not my objection. Yeah. My objection is what's actually being detailed. A couple of quick shout-outs, super chats. Michael Kahn, thank you very much for the super chat. In all shouty caps. So I don't look tight when I send my freebie. Oh, okay. Here's my freebie. Thank you for the support. Really appreciate it. I don't see them as freebies. you're a member. You've paid for your membership, and you get a super chat with your membership that you have to pay for. So it's far from free. Thank you very much for the support, though.
I don't want to miss the point here, because wave function collapse is just a language. It's a particle. Light is a particle, and she just showed it.
It seems to me, from a philosophical point of view, maybe, that quantum mechanics is the heliocentric believers' black swan, if you understand what I mean. Because they have to rely on Einstein, and that debunks Einstein's general relativity. So it is the black swan. So it's like, if any of them ever actually truly get it and understand it, how can they still call themselves heliocentrists?
They can't.
Yeah.
It makes no odds. I mean,
You could say the
we've
science-
often speculated in the past that that's the reason for our existence, as grandiose as that may sound. In other words, there's got to be a transition at some point. There is so much technology that's come off the back of quantum mechanics, which debunks Einstein, that you can't hide it forever.
Yeah.
Well, the scientific method is their black swan.
Yes.
When you really get down to it, like
Yeah.
the existence of empiricism is what destroys them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because there's a slight difference between debunking the globe and debunking heliocentrism. Although that might seem nonsensical, it actually isn't nonsensical, considering what heliocentrism involves, which is a lot more than just a rotating globe.
Well, that would
Absolutely.
explain
Just
all
before you do,
the.
Just before you do, John's absolutely correct. The black swan would be the science that they don't have, hence our housekeeping question, any scientific evidence of gravity, because that's their problem. Go ahead, 10th.
Well, that's the point. There's all these videos that Jaron says, look, I just go to Google and type in scientific method. Look what they all say. Okay, we know why they're there now. We know they're there because it's the black swan they want to avoid.
Yeah, it's an archaic method that used to be used many years ago before the evolution of science. That's probably going to turn up eventually.
Yeah, they've
As a
usurped it. They've hijacked it.
If we
No, I
measure
know,
the
but hang on. This needs a little bit more. This is why Jaron is fooled. You can't prove anything because they want you in this world of probability where you can't prove anything.
Yeah, because they want to like what I said a minute ago in sarcasm. Unfortunately, maybe the direction things will take, where they when they reference scientific method, or scientific method as part of a video, they'll have a little tramp stamp underneath from Wiki saying this is an archaic method that was used in the latter day of science before the evolution of present day, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I mean? It's like with flat Earth. It's an archaic thing that people used to supposedly believe in, blah, blah, blah.
Okay,
as
one more
opposed to
time.
it being just true.
One more time. John said cause and effect is done with probabilistic universe. It can't change and be caused by something else, meaning the cause and effect is over if you believe in the probabilistic universe. So all of a sudden we get all these videos that science doesn't prove things because it can change and it can be caused by something else, except heat applied causes water to boil. Now they're saying in the future that heat will not work. Something else could cause that water to boil, but we are studying heat. So 100 years ago, they used heat to boil water. Today, we use heat to boil water. Hasn't changed.
It's even more stupid than that, though, if you're talking about quantum.
Who said earlier that it was a world of chaos? I tried to allude to that. I just couldn't find the right word when I was saying, well, nothing would be as you would expect it. You know, everything could change at a moment's notice. Yeah, you'd live in a world of chaos. Well, that is the world of heliocentrism. It is a world of chaos. Your very existence has come by pure chance. Just look. Just the stars exploding, and just by the right amount of time elapsing, there was the right amount of stuff. Just lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time when a thunderbolt hit it, and then life came to be. So it's an entire world of chaos.
Yeah, exactly, because it can't be anything else if you go by the definition of what they're claiming. You know, they're claiming chaos.
And what flies in the face of that, John? Something that's got empiricism attached to it. So if you have a methodology
Yep.
that gives you an absolute in the outcome, then there is no room for probabilistic worlds.
That's why they fight so hard against it. Whenever whenever QE points it out, it's what it's lurking in the back of their mind, and they know that can't be true, because if it is, their entire paradigm is gone.
It is. It went with quantum mechanics. As I say, we've speculated in the past that that's as a result we're here, because eventually you've got to soften the world up to the nonsense notions of heliocentrism and standing on a ball when it doesn't comport with reality. It's not how reality's functioning. It's not how it's functioned since the time we've ever been moving around on the world. It's always been utilized and still is to this day as flat. The mechanics of the things that bullshit you into belief of a ball utilize flat geometry. You've seen it. It's in this presentation. It's riddled. You can't get away from the flat earth that's required. No amount of heliocentric predictive capabilities to give the church Easter is going to change when they've used that reification to control people, to put them in a bleak world of chaos. Keep them under control. That's the only purpose. That can't last forever. The web of deceit's got too big, and when you get to things like this, where the practically applied debunking of a fundamental aspect of heliocentrism just keeps advancing society, but we'll just keep... They've managed it for 100+ years to hide it.
Can I make a response to Tent just before you play on?
Yep.
About what he said about Jaron? There's actually worse than that with Jaron Campanella, because Jaron Campanella isn't saying that we'll find something else that will cause water to boil instead of heat. He's literally saying that something else may be found that causes water to boil. But that doesn't mean, without prefacing this, that doesn't mean heat doesn't cause it. Do you understand? He's even more mixed up, because he knows heat causes water to boil, yet he's trying to come up with some paradigm of probability, some kind of a safety net for no reason.
Well, I could relieve the tension, because when I get really mad, I'm boiling, but it's not because of heat.
Spins of our two entangled particles along the same axis. The two particles will measure opposite spins 100% of the time. If we measure the spin of one particle along the x-axis, and we measure the spin of its partner along the y-axis, the two particles will measure opposite spins 50% of the time. These facts are not mysterious.
Who cares? What is this proving?
Hang on. Hang on. She just said, or this voice, these facts are not mysterious. But the whole show has been about nothing can be certain.
Well,
What is mysterious is what happens when one of the two detectors is oriented in the
Detectors. She didn't say detectors at any point. She said there was two plates. What she didn't mention that what she was describing with this graphic was slit detectors. Are they slit detectors? Is it passing through a slit? None of this makes any sense.
diagonal configuration, offset by 45 degrees from the other detector.
Hello?
In this case,
Hello?
Nathan?
Yes.
Sorry, I was on mute accidentally. But I mean, how are you gonna measure the spin of a particle with a particle detector?
I have no idea.
That doesn't make any sense.
None of this makes sense.
the two particles measure opposite spins approximately 85% of the time. This result has been experimentally verified many times.
What? Experimentally
How?
verified? You're just describing what something does, but you're not explaining cause and effect reasoning. This isn't an experiment, as far as I can ascertain, because either she's done an extremely poor job, the computer voice, of detailing precisely what this is showing, what the phenomena is, what the assumed cause is, what was validated by way of varying that presumed cause. We've got light, entangled particles with varying spins 85% of the time when you tip detectors. What kind of detectors? Are they spin orientation detectors? What the hell is she babbling about? What is this
Well,
nonsense?
obviously,
I want to know how
obviously-
that works. Like,
Obvious-
how do you detect the spin of a particle?
Just technobabble. This is bullshit. Baffle them with
Right.
bullshit.
Right, but it's inserted because obviously they're greasing the skids for the next statement.
Many physicists view this result as evidence that the future cannot be predicted.
Let me get it straight. According to what we've just been told, experimentally, it's not, you fire entangled particles, split them, and then see when they're split, which direction of spin they take, and you notice that one takes the opposite direction 85% of the time. Therefore, the future can't be travelled to. Is anybody
Hold on.
else putting that together?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, when you say it like that.
What is the hypothesis? What is a hypothesis?
Suppositional statement of cause for an effect you observed in nature.
Or a scientific prediction.
Or a
of
scientific
cause, right?
prediction. Yes.
You can't predict anything according to her.
It's just a probability. Tomorrow might be different.
Even by an observer external to our universe.
What? Experimentally validated by a hypothetical observer outside of our universe. This is total drivel.
The reason
But
for this
Nathan-
is
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, isn't this the reason why, like, the few people that are heliocentrists that did understand quantum mechanics, they started talking about how we live in, they started trying to come up with ideas about how we live in, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a video game? And a simulation?
A rendered reality.
You know the way this? Yeah, they started trying to go down that direction. It's everything but we live in 3D reality, and there's something outside of this that is responsible for this, and it is in charge, and you're not going to know what it is. It's everything but that, isn't it? You won't know
everything
the
but
creator.
that. Yes, I thought you were saying that's what they say. No, everything but that. Yes.
explained by the following. The letter D represents the diagonal axis. Hypothetically, suppose an observer external to our universe.
What? No. How about that?
What?
No.
Could predict all
Observer
future
in the
measurements.
universe. Ooh, this is getting really spooky.
Right. In terms of hypothesis construction, the thing that's going to be experimentally validated is the thing that you suppose causes the effect. And to be, in this example, your independent variable, your supposed cause, you have to be, number one, the presumed cause in the hypothesis. Number two, real. Number three, capable of being varied by a researcher. This fits none of those things.
Of the spin states.
I'm sorry.
Is she there?
I just want to say I still don't even know like how she's supposedly making a particle start spinning or detecting it. Like this entire spin of particles seems like a complete science fiction because I don't know how that works, any of it.
Well, the problem
Hold on. Is it just me? It's technobabble. When any claim to be scientifically validated explanation starts with the words, hypothetically suppose an observer external to our universe could predict all future measurements of the spin states. When it starts with statements like that, so let's break that down. Hypothetically, so not within the purview of the physical, not within something I'm actually going to do, but hypothetically speaking, we are going to imagine an observer.
So we're talking about unicorn states then, because this spin state, I still don't even know what that's supposed to be.
Well, you're supposed to be imagining.
Well, you nailed it there.
You're supposed to be imagining someone else external to the physical world we live in. That would be our universe. Imagine someone external to that. And imagine that that person can predict all future measurements of spin states, Arwin. You there, imagining this with me? like they're telling you to, because those are the
can
exact words
imagine
they're
that,
using.
but I still don't know what a spin state is in order to imagine it.
You don't need to at this
Arwen.
stage, Arwen. You need to imagine you are conceptualizing an observer. You're not the observer. And that conceptual observer exists outside the known existence that we're describing. Have you done that yet?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. No problem.
Right, now imagine that hypothetical observer that exists outside the known universe we exist within can predict all measurements of the spin states. Have you done that now?
No, but I'm having trouble there because I don't know what a freaking spin state is.
You don't need to. You need to imagine that the man outside the universe can.
Yeah, but I can imagine that part, but I
Well,
don't
there you
know
go.
what
Now we're there. You see how
spin
easy
state
that
is.
was? Simple.
Yeah, but
For all
never mind.
possible future orientations of the two
Yes.
Hang on, Nathan. Brian, let me just go quick, and then you do it. Remember the video we did? I think it was a while back ago. It was on Einstein, and these are people who are heliocentric, believe all this crap, say it all was in his imagination.
What, like at the end of
You
the
nailed
story,
it.
and he woke up and it was all just a big dream.
But that's not what's happening here.
You should imagine your God.
But the problem is she's working. She's trying to work within a situation that's impossible. She is trying to explain quantum mechanics in a paradigm that she believes in that's debunked by quantum mechanics. So when she says things like particle spin, the reason that makes no sense is because none of this makes any sense, because the paradigm she's trying to fit quantum mechanics into is debunked by quantum mechanics. The whole thing is, I mean, there's no way, it's literally not possible for her to make sense out of any of this. It's impossible.
okay, I get that, but what is particle spin that was debunked, though? I still don't know what that's supposed
I
to be.
keep telling you, you don't need to. You just won't have it. You don't need to.
Well, I feel
You just need to imagine your God.
detectors. Let's graphically illustrate these predictions for each set of entangled particles. Here, we show an example where the spin of a particle along the diagonal axis is opposite to the spin of its partner along the x-axis 85% of the time,
Therefore, the future doesn't exist.
and opposite to the spin of its partner along the y-axis 85% of the time.
There's these long protracted silences with clown music.
It makes sense. So it makes sense now. Much more sense.
The problem is that Einstein's theory of
One
relativity
second.
can be seen in this illustration.
Sorry.
Meeting 50% correlation between the x-axis and the y-axis is impossible if we want to also meet the 85% value regarding the diagonal axis.
See, now it all makes sense. Because 50% correlation between the x-axis and y-axis is impossible if we want to meet the 85% value regarding the diagonal axis, Arwen. Obviously, we want to meet the 85%, don't we?
But how does this particle spin influence anything other than being detectable, or supposedly?
You're
What
not
does it
focused on the
actually
right-
do?
You keep doing it. You're not focused on the right things. What you need
Shut
to
up.
focus on...
I just want to know what particle spin is. I'm done with the presupposing. I want to know what the hell I'm trying to presuppose here.
You're not supposed to. You're supposed to focus on how much spin and whether it's 50 or 85%. What's wrong with you?
But I can't know how much of it something is when I don't know what it is.
It's 50% of it. What it is irrelevant. We're talking 50% of that spin.
You're doing it on purpose, aren't you?
I'm only going through what she's going through. What you want? I'm pretty much saying it verbatim.
But I want you to side with me and realize that we don't know what we're talking about here, even hypothetically. I mean, if you say unicorn horn, then at least I have something to imagine. With a particle spin, I fail to see how that is relevant to anything that I understand about particles.
Okay,
and matter.
let me try and rephrase it so it makes more sense. Do you know what a particle is?
Sorry, what?
Do you know what a particle is?
Yeah.
You know what spinning is?
Yeah.
Imagine the particle. Now imagine that notion of it, the particle, spinning.
I don't think that's even possible.
Just imagine it.
Because like a spin would already like be multiple units of something that spin. Literally, it's the motion of the whole in relation to everything else within the whole that is creating the spin. A particle is a unit which isn't even like perfectly defined as to what is happening there. Like what, the electron spin, the neutron, proton spin, like what? Like,
Yes.
it doesn't do anything.
Imagine it spinning.
No.
Don't just say no.
But what's wrong, Arwen, is they're trying to describe a situation of probabilistic nothingness, chaos, right? Because they can't accept that certain parts of quantum mechanics show that we're not in charge of any of this. You know, that's really what's been shown. So they can't take that. So that means to them, they have to say, that means the future can't be predicted. No, you're not allowed to know the future in the way you want to know it.
As a reified place you can travel to on a timeline in a fourth dimension.
Oh, this is about time as a assumed substance then.
Yes. Yes. Try and keep up.
Okay.
When you say an observer outside this universe, you're referring to a certain entity that has a name.
God.
So are we really going to pretend we're God? Right.
Hypothetically.
No, we're not.
So how fast are these particles spinning?
85% or 50% of the time.
No, that's which direction they were spinning at. There was no mention of a speed.
No, which direction they will spin in based on how often they measure it going through the detector. It's whether or not it's one orientation or the other, and it's 85% of the time as opposed to 50. Therefore, we can't know the future. Try and keep up.
Okay. I get it.
Oh my God. How long does this last?
The spin of a particle along each axis can actually be predicted by some hypothetical.
We've just started. What do you mean, hang on?
Well, because time will tell how long it lasts.
Observer. Suppose we eliminate this assumption. Suppose that the future does not yet exist, and that the future spin states are therefore impossible to predict, even by an observer external to our universe.
Okay, so do you know everything I made absolutely explicitly clear for you to imagine? Now imagine...
Right?
Bloody hell. Let's try that again. You know all that stuff that I was hyper-specific about getting you to imagine? That observer external to the universe who can predict all of the different states of spin?
Yeah.
Now imagine that doesn't exist.
Okay, done. No problem.
Okay, cool.
Since we only measure the spin of each particle along only one axis, there is no need to create an illustration such as this one.
Okay, so the illustration that we had up for quite a significant period of time with music playing over the background and nothing being talked about, we can ignore all that. Just so we're clear.
If there are no predictable measurements to the axes which we did not measure, and we focus only on the axis for each particle which we actually do measure, the paradox goes away, and there are no longer any contradictions.
Yep. We all clear?
Wow, so that bullshit that she made up that we had to imagine, and then imagine that it wasn't there, because it's no longer there, the paradox is also gone. Wow,
Yes,
so that
correct.
shit
That's right.
caused the paradox, when you stop imagining it, then that paradox is gone. Brilliant.
That's correct. That's correct. Based on the ontological primitives that you are taking through quantum mechanics, 2, you would have to envisage an external observer, like God, seeing all. But that creates a paradox with their probabilistic universe. So what you do is you take the knowledge and understanding explicit in nature of that external entity watching everything, and then you eradicate it, and it's no longer a paradox. Genius.
More like ignoring than eradicating.
But it's not a paradox anymore, Arwin. That's the bit you need to focus on.
Yeah, if you don't know it exists, then it's not a paradox to you anymore.
Or if you do know it exists, but you also know that it doesn't because you've said it doesn't.
Yeah.
Has anyone studying
The
this
fact that we
deeply? Has anyone studying this deeply ever heard quantum mechanics and the Slit experiment talk about spin at different percentages?
No.
So this is just all made up.
It's all nonsense.
Measure the 85% value regarding the diagonal axis is what
Scientific validity isn't offered in percentage values. It's only offering proof of your supposition of cause, or it is invalidating that as a cause. So it's either validating a null, that would be getting a zero difference result, you're not causing the effect, or you cause the effect. It's one or other. There is no percentage in science.
leads many physicists to conclude
He talks about maths, probability, eradicating entities that she's been specific about you understanding, because quantum mechanics points directly to that, and then eradicates it to get rid of the paradox within heliocentrism and fourth dimensional space-time bending.
that the value for the
hang on,
spin of
hang
a
on.
particle doesn't actually exist until the measurement is actually made.
Hang on. So the quanta we see hit the photographic plate, but somewhere between it being fired to hitting the photographic plate, this person is saying scenario one, you can measure spin. Scenario two,
No.
you can't measure the spin.
No, that's not what she's saying. There was no photographic plate. There was no detector at all. The detector described by her as a spin measuring device to give you a percentage in terms of orientation along one axis when ignoring the other, taken as an observer, seeing it as an external knower of all probabilities to come, and then simultaneously ignoring that that even exists to eradicate the paradox. Then you have an 85% chance over the 50% chance, which isn't possible, proving that you can't know the future.
So two
But you
sides
just
of the
said-
argument, one for, one against. So they nullify because you didn't make any point.
If you listen to what she just said, though, she just said, but there was no particle until it was detected.
Yeah, meaningless nonsense. Totally untrue.
Yeah.
It means nothing. What is actually the case within quantum mechanics is, until you know which path the light travelled through, and the way you know is by detecting it with a slit detector. What are you knowing? Which path the light took. It's got two choices. It's a slit. Double slit. Shocking, isn't it? Well, you've got slit detectors. You only need one, because if it goes through the other one, your detector won't see it. If it goes through the one the detector's on, it will. It's definitely gone through one or other of them. So you need to know, that's knowledge, which path the light went through. Upon knowing which path, that acquisition of knowledge induces a change. You could call it a phenomena. That phenomena is described as wave function collapse. Now, wave function is the probability distribution before there is the acquisition of knowledge. After the acquisition of knowledge, guess what happens? The light hits behind the slit. Whichever slit it went through, the light hits behind it. Exactly as you would expect. You walk through a door, you are on the other side of the door. Not you walk through the door and you might be in Australia, you might be in America, you might be in China. No. There's no probability. In normal reality, you walk through a door and you end up on the other side of it. That's how normality presents itself. And that's what happens if you know which path the light went through. But if you don't, and there is no knowledge to acquire now or later, it's not recorded, it's not documented, nobody knows which path the light took, then you have a probability distribution, also known as diffraction.
Well, I think what she's talking about is we're not really capable of describing light except at the points like at the slit or at the plate or at the emitter. The distance, the journey itself, right, is what we have trouble describing.
I'd agree with that.
What she's saying is she knows. What she's saying is she knows that it doesn't exist until this happens, but we don't know that.
Yeah, we don't know that's not the case, to say that isn't the case, because we don't know either way. But in terms of your first statement, I absolutely agree. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, in terms of the journey, sometimes we take the piss out of Whitsitt for this, because he's quite categoric in his statements in this regard. Light doesn't have a journey. No, we can't see a journey that it's taking, but we know lights come from the emitter. We know that it's detected halfway along its journey if you're going to reify it, because we can't. That's John's point. We know it reaches the slit detector, and then at the end of the journey, it hits a plate, another detector of sorts. Okay, well, in conventional wisdom, we would describe that as a journey. But that's where the problems begin. We have a very limited understanding of what light actually does. Now, we don't have to make a positive claim, because there is no investigation in that regard in the double slit experiment. Because the double slit experiment is quite narrow, like all science. It's hyper-specific in terms of what it's trying to establish. The cause of an effect. In this case, wave function collapse. Well, that is all it does. It doesn't tell you about axes of spin of photons. It doesn't tell you about their orientation. It doesn't do any of that. It just tells you which path the light took when you measure which slit it went through. That's all it does. And when you get that knowledge, you understand a cause and effect relationship. That's it.
Hence, this leads to the more general conclusion that there are certain properties of particles that don't exist until they are measured. Another way of stating this
It's completely outside the purview of knowledge of which path is an independent variable and wave function collapse, or as a more broad term, diffraction, and the study thereof. That's what you're establishing in the cause and effect relationship that is the double slit. What she's shown is a convoluted nonsense extrapolation and bastardization of the delayed choice quantum eraser with a description of slit detectors, now orientation detectors, and the extrapolation that comes from a generalization of what can't be as a result of this knowledge. What knowledge? You haven't done any experiments. You've just baffled the audience with bullshit. I mean, we've taken a considerable amount of time breaking down every word of it and pointing out the stupidity in it. When you talk about 85% versus 50%, not letting you allow for a time prediction for the future, it's absurd when we break it down. But if you're watching this as a normie, it'll be so far over your head that you'll just be left with the conclusion that obviously Einstein's right. Obviously we've got bent 4D space-time. Obviously we know what we know about time and how there isn't now. You won't, question this garbage for what it actually is, because they've just baffled you with techno garbage.
Is that the future value of a measurement doesn't exist.
The future value of a measurement doesn't exist. My running a tape measure down that table in front of me next Tuesday doesn't exist. That's absolutely profound.
Until the measurement is actually made.
Profound. So the measurement of the table that I haven't made yet doesn't exist, but when I do measure it, it does exist. Profound.
So she's
The
saying when it
idea-
does exist, there's a present.
When you do measure something, the measurement exists then. But until you measured it, it doesn't exist. Wow.
Of the
Yeah, but it
future
doesn't-
not yet.
hang on. It doesn't exist even then because there's no present.
Hold on a second. You're telling me a 15-inch table is not a 15-inch table until I measure it?
No,
Really?
no. The measurement you make of the 15-inch table doesn't exist as a measurement until you measure it. Profound, huh?
That's deep.
Deep, deep, very deep. Or, just to be clear for the audience who don't necessarily understand sarcasm, meaningless drivel.
Yeah, but it doesn't exist even when you measure it because there's no present.
We got that the first one.
I think Nathan, you're 100% correct. Well, I'm not sure if you're making this exact point, but I think I'm in the same ballpark. Are they literally trying to confuse people into accepting Einstein?
Yes.
Because even us listening to this now, I can be sarcastic about it, but even when it comes to some of the quantum mechanics elements of it, I understand what they're doing, but I don't understand every part of those experiments because I haven't studied them. But I understand scientific method, right? But the point is that even for me, who has people to refer to, who does understand this, does know this, and I have a certain amount of learning in it, even I'm like it's just complete battle. You know what I mean?
Brian, why would they lie?
Well, they are in a position where they can't not.
Nicely.
No, I'm agreeing with you and Nathan.
Yeah.
Why would they lie? No, this is above our heads. They know their stuff. They got
what
degrees.
Tent's doing is he's standing in for the guy who's completely bowled over by the fact we've taken this apart at its root and go, but why would they lie about this? Who gives a crap?
That existing shatters the view of the four-dimensional block universe, which states that the entire timeline has always existed from the beginning.
No, that's what you said we had to imagine as an external entity to the known universe, aka God, and then you eradicate it to get rid of your paradox. But you're now saying that, the paradox you eradicated by ignoring it, when you look at it, destroys 4D spacetime? Why bring it back up? Oh, because he's actually trying to shatter it. It's in the title. Four-dimension and block universe shattered. I see. So his conclusion is, in essence, the same as ours. Yeah, don't misgender the AI. It's not necessarily a she. In fact, I know from good authority that this AI identifies as an attack helicopter.
It is possible to try to reconcile quantum mechanics with the idea of a four-dimensional block universe.
Oh, it is possible to reconcile the debunked 4D space-time by using quantum mechanics, the very thing that debunked it. No, definitely not. Why are you dropping this on the end?
But this involves delving into various other interpretations of quantum mechanics.
No, just quantum mechanics debunks 4D spacetime.
As discussed in detail in the video titled Quantum Physics, List of Philosophical Interpretations.
Don't need any philosophical interpretations when you've got scientific validity. It's very narrow. Just offers you the cause and effect that you're studying. But obviously, if it doesn't comport with your 4D spacetime, you're going to need quantum physics and a list of philosophical interpretations of it.
Also, a much more detailed explanation of the 85% value regarding the diagonal axis and its implications is available in the video Quantum Entanglement, Bell Inequality,
There you go, Arwin. There's where you can find your explanations about the spin.
Okay.
Is this one of these videos that says globe Earth debunked or flat Earth debunked or something, and when people watch it, it's actually the opposite?
No, this is entirely separate. We're looking at it as just a standalone person who's assessing heliocentric nonsense in 4D spacetime and then smashing it. Nothing to do with flat Earth, though. I can only take that from maybe 10th knows better.
Well, I don't mean it like that. It doesn't matter what example you use. The point I'm making is the title of the video is. Can you give me the title again? I forget it exactly. Something.
It's 4-dimension block universe shattered.
Right. But is that what the outcome of the video? The outcome of the video wasn't that it was shattered.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's one of them where they say, "Look at all the flaws in our model, and how they're overcome by ignoring the paradox. Look how I explained how we overcame it." So at the end, conclusion: 4D space-time real.
Yeah. It's a sports advertising as well. Yeah, it's like it's like a drawing. It's like I've seen it. Trump is a racist, and people click on it, and it's all about how Trump isn't racist. Do you know what I mean? That kind of a thing. I'm not going political. I'm just saying it's that kind of thing. It's like they're throwing people in there, and then they're not. It's like free hamburgers, and they go in and they get free
with the
pizza.
same example, it's like saying Trump's a racist, and then you click on the article, and in the article it says, Trump has been accused of being a racist, yet he has done all of these diverse measures to improve the black community in this area.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
It's like false advertising. Yeah.
Gotcha.
No, but hang on. This whole video has been so convoluted, and the whole purpose of it is to get you to abandon logic and reason. Now, we've applied logic and reason just about every word coming out of this video, and we've shown how confusing it is even to them, because they actually argue both sides of their own argument.
Yeah.
With that, sorry to cut Brian off, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels. If you're watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Yeah, massive thank you to Discord and G+ panels for making the live show possible, and to all of you for smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hit me up on PayPal, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on an after show, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!